wrapped up in an epic sci-fi story that's so freaky. Whoa! It makes me shake just thinking about it. Halo, Combat Evolved. Buy one. Heck, buy two. That's an order, soldier.
Halo Combat Evolved is a first-person shooter released in 2001 by Bungie for the Xbox.
Wow.
And later for the PC.
This isn't working.
To say it received critical acclaim is an understatement. It's renowned as one of the cornerstone shooters that paved the way for an entirely new era of gaming. There have been both sequels and spin-offs that I won't attempt to keep track of because it confused me. There's even been a TV show, cementing the fact that no matter how good something is, someone can make a mediocre TV show about it. But I did like her. That is some bone-breaking snoo-snoo. So why review the game over 20 years later? Well, Lord knows I have the time. More importantly, it was on sale on Steam, along with every other Halo game worth playing apparently. This is the Master Chief Collection on Steam, and you have no choice but to link it with your Microsoft account. This was not an issue for me, as I was on Windows, so I already had an account, but it is an additional step that, oh, to be frank, I'm sick of all these accounts. I really am. Nobody enjoys this. The game features multiplayer and I have no intention of touching it, sorry. But I will review the single player experience, and for spoilers, it's open season, baby. It's 20 years old, you've been warned. Okay, we'll start with the gameplay and how the game opens up, but first, a note about the remaster. There are two ways to play Halo, with the enhanced visuals available with the MCC edition, or the original visuals, the way the game first came out. I am playing with the original visuals. I'd read online that the remastered graphics, while pretty, lost something in translation, and I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of the ambience is lost in the remaster. I'll talk about this in the visual segment later, but I wanted to bring this up early to say that if you can't stand the game looking all blocky, don't worry, you don't have to play it like that. But I want to review the original game. I don't mind HD textures or higher poly models, I've always been a fan of that.
Amusing. Now if you'll excuse me.
But in this instance, the entire look has been changed, and so we go OG style. You can switch between modes at any time by hitting the tab key, which is incredibly frustrating as that would have been the perfect key to switch between your two weapon slots. You can only carry two weapons at a time. Oh yes, it's one of those games. For difficulty, I will be playing on Heroic because I tried Legendary difficulty and after much deliberation I decided I preferred my balls unstomped. The game begins with a wonderfully cinematic intro aboard the UNSC vessel, the Pillar of Autumn. The UNSC have walked into orbit of a giant ring world built by unknown aliens, and it's very important they study it. But another group of aliens called the Covenant have beaten them to the punch. Captain Keyes says to spare no expense in securing the alien ring. As UNSC forces mobilise, we watch a bunch of Marines get the most cliched and amazing pep talk.
I don't care if it's God's own anti-son of a bitch machine or a giant hula hoop, we're not gonna let them have it. Am I right, Marines? Sir, yes, sir!
Before we cut to the hero of our story being thawed out, Master Chief, the legend himself, begins his saga next to the frozen peas. The ship is under attack, and as the hero we need to take action. Fortunately, this crewman is going to show me the way to the Our first mission is to find our way to the bridge. After a nice running sequence aided by a Marine who doesn't get blown up, we meet up with Captain Keyes, who says we've got to get down to the Great Big Ring in space and also keep the shipboard AI out of Covenant hands. That AI being Cortana, the bluish-purple woman seen here, who is downloaded into Chief's suit. I'm already a fan because I enjoy games with brainworm-style companions. Captain Keyes hands us his pistol and says he doesn't keep it loaded. Are you kidding me? Janeway would not be caught dead with a dud phaser. We head off to fight our way to the escape pods and the movement feels nice. It controls the same as any FPS, but moving feels very tight. There's no fake wobble or forced momentum, at least when you're just running around. No sprint key, thank goodness, you just move at top speed all the time. The jump is a bit floaty, but I presume this is due to the artificial gravity on board, and honestly it's part of the era. Oh fucking Jonesy. The initial experience is a literal corridor shooter, but don't be fooled. As I move through the autumn, fighting against the Covenant forces, sections with multiple paths open up to me. They all ultimately lead to the same point of access to the next area, but I approve of this. You even have to duck into the Jeffries tubes, a staple in science fiction, and can use these to flank the enemies by going the long way around, or just pop out the first hatch you see. It is, however, exceptionally dark in these tubes, and I take to firing my pistol to see where I'm going. I don't have access to the manual, so if there is a flashlight, the game hasn't told me yet. This tells me pressing Q activates my flashlight. It doesn't. Q hits people. Don't stress, I figure it out later, and yes, you can rebind all of these in the options, but the truth is, I didn't think to check because A, I'm stupid, B, I like to see if the game will ever inform the player of its key bindings, and C, I was actually having a lot of fun, so the reasoning part of my brain was turned off. The reason I was having a lot of fun is because despite being quite linear, the maze-like layout and the pacing of the initial level is well done. For now, the Covenant forces are limited to 2 enemy types, but they're fun to fight against. I'll chat about them later, but for now I want to talk about the most important part of any FPS. When I fire a gun, the projectiles go where I'm aiming, every single time. Yet there are different levels of accuracy depending on the weapon, and the targeting reticule will change for every weapon to reflect where you can expect to hit. Every weapon handles differently, and I know that's to be expected, but what I find most impressive about Halo's weapons is it isn't just, this gun shoots bigger bullets. I think it best I break down each weapon in brief. I'm not a gun nut or a munitions expert. Most of my knowledge of guns comes from listening to Major Carter.
It carries a 50-round top-loading magazine of Teflon-coated ordnance with a cyclical rate of fire of 900 rounds per minute.
But I will try to use the correct terms where possible. First is the M6D Magnum. Very accurate, shoots as fast as you can fire it, but with a limited capacity. It is surprisingly strong and great for headshots. What surprised me even more is the zoom function. There's a very satisfying punch to it. The bread and butter of the UNSC is this beauty, the MA5B assault rifle. While it isn't the strongest weapon, it does fire insanely fast. This makes it fantastic for clearing up packs of enemies with no shields on. Again, it suffers against shielded enemies, but the large magazine coupled with plentiful ammo makes this just a fun gun to fire. It's also got that lovely ammo counter on the gun itself, which is such a great touch. Not only does this make so much sense, it's of course a nod to the ammo counter on the side of the Alien's pulse rifle, but I feel having the ammo counter on the top and not the side is just smarter. I base this on the logic that the speedometer is on my dashboard and not the wing mirror. The gun also has a compass which always points north, which is really useful anywhere except in space. While we're chatting about projectile weapons, it wasn't long before I noticed that the shields employed by the Covenant deflect incoming human projectile weapons. However, their own energy weapons don't bounce, they merely deplete the shield. That's a fantastic detail. This carries over to the shield bearers, meaning even a well-placed sniper shot would just ricochet into the night sky. Oh yes, I was very happy when I got my hands on the sniper rifle. It's introduced with a purpose. You're tasked with sneaking ahead and taking out Covenant gunner emplacements before the troops can move in. Great way to introduce a weapon. Give it to the player in a scenario in which it will excel, yet don't restrict the player to taking that avenue of attack. If you want to go in guns blazing,
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
I decided that there was nothing stopping me from just getting on those gun platforms. Halo is very quickly shaping up to be a game that is designed with the brain of a video game player. The sniper rifle handles beautifully, it's always accurate, deadly, and is so satisfying to fire. Very quick to scope in and easy to home in with. Cortana informs me that I can activate its night vision mode by hitting 4, and it suddenly occurs to me, for fuck's sake, 4 turns on your flashlight. The rocket launcher in Halo is one of the most enjoyable rocket launchers in gaming. It's in my top 10 rocket launchers. It feels like an older style UT launcher, but with faster travel time and with a bit more blast radius. Of course, my favourite weapon is the shotgun, it always is. It's powerful, weighty, with a decent rate of fire, and best of all, you can fire without fully reloading. You don't get it until halfway through the game. A crying shame, but I can't complain. It just feels so good to fire, and while its spread is still quite limited for a shotgun, in my opinion, it deals a lot of damage to at least one direct target or 2 close targets. The projectile weapons are all fast-paced, quick to fire and quick to hit weapons. Accuracy ranges from the pinpoint pistol and sniper rifle to the ask questions later widespread of the assault rifle and shotgun. All satisfying to fire and they all feel very human. The energy weapons are where Halo's weapon design shines, not because they're more fun to use than the UNSC guns, almost all the guns are fun, but because the Covenant guns feel appropriately alien. The two main factors in this are that the UNSC guns, being projectile weapons, all accept clips and magazines. They can fire endlessly with no drawback until you run empty and are forced to reload. Reloading takes time. Time you might spend better switching to a different weapon or just beating the ever-loving shit out of someone. Energy weapons are battery based, meaning there is no reload function whatsoever. You fire until the battery is dead, then you throw it away and pick up a new one. The Covenant are not environmentally friendly, but that's okay because it means you're never caught with an empty gun so long as you have at least one energy weapon. However, energy weapons generate a lot of heat. Keep these suckers on full vibrate for too long and they burn up. While overheating, you're locked out of firing, obviously, until they chill out. So the time lost mechanic from reloading is still sort of there, but it presents the player with the challenge of mitigating overheat by getting a sense of each weapon and controlling their rate of fire, knowing when to turn it up and when to take a break. This echoes the ammo management of the projectile weapons by posing a similar problem with a similar punishment. You don't want to run out of ammo or overheat in the middle of a firefight. I'm going on about this because this is really fantastic gunplay for 2001. Onto the energy weapons themselves. They're all plasma based, so no phasers. Sorry, Worf. The Type 25 plasma pistol is the bigger brother, I think, of the UNSC variant. This will similarly fire as fast as you can pull the trigger, however it is far stronger against enemy shields than the M6D, tearing them up like butter. The projectiles themselves are not hit scan, so you'll need to get used to the lead in, but the plasma pistol comes with the added bonus of being able to charge up a shot. By holding the trigger, you'll see the meter rise into the red, and when it's ready to release, you can fire a powerful blast. This shot will briefly overheat the weapon, but it's strong enough to take out an elite's shield in one hit. The plasma rifle is the automatic version of the pistol. That's pretty much it. No charge shot mechanic, and the truth is the plasma pistol can actually fire faster. The main benefits of the rifle are you can just hold down the trigger, and it seems to stagger enemies if they're caught in its fire. At least that's what I observed, but I'm sure the pistol does this as well. The Halopedia calls this the Okada Far Pattern Plasma Rifle, but I think it's more of an Okada fat disappointment. Technically, it's just a worse version of the plasma pistol. In practice, it's great for when you just want to press mouse 1 and forget your worries. Lastly, the Needler, which is an interesting weapon. It's a projectile weapon, but I'm grouping it with the Energy Boys because it fires homing crystal projectiles, which is weird enough to put it in here. It reloads and can accept new ammo pickups. When you fire while aiming at a target, the crystals will do their best to home in and stick themselves into whoever you were aiming at. Then they burst. The more you stick in someone, the bigger the bang. This can be an exceptionally painful process. However, the truth is that these only ever seem to be capable of reaching the grunts, that's the little guys. The elites just dodge out of the way. Rarely can you pump enough crystals into someone to actually hurt them. It's a fun gun, but a little weak. I wanted to use this gun a lot, but I just left it on the floor often because I knew it wouldn't do jack shit. That being said, I do like all of the weapons, even the last two, which are a bit of a letdown. They're fun to use, and that is what matters. However, you can only carry 2 weapons at a time. At first I thought I was going to bitch something awful about this, having gone from Bioshock to Bioshock Infinite, which featured the most insane change in going from carrying every weapon to just 2 at a time. Ugh! I thought I'd hate this in Halo, but I didn't. It feels and plays so different to Bioshock Infinite, where I still, to this day, hate that limited weapon availability. Yet in Halo, it just feels more like you're a Spartan. You're a fucking badass on an alien world moving through troops. You fire a gun until it's out, then pick up the weapon of the alien you just killed, then you do it again. You're never longing for a weapon you love for very long. I really hated starting a chapter without the shotgun once I'd used it, but an enemy dropped a shotgun pretty soon after it started every time. So yeah, in short, the weapon system works in Halo. There are also grenades, and you'll find 2 types. The good old frag grenade's a staple of the UNSC that explodes with a very satisfying bang.
Remember me? Bang, and the dirt is gone.
And the plasma grenade used by filthy alien scum. Again, both with little differences. Frag grenades bounce off of things before exploding, plasma grenades stick to things before exploding, meaning you can stick them onto enemies and vehicles and just wait for the bang. While you can't do that with frag grenades, you can get them to bounce off the environment into places you may not have a clear line of sight. There's a button to switch between the two types as well. When it comes to distance, Master Chief has a great throwing arm. So long as you can aim, it'll get there. And here is the best sticky grenade I've ever thrown.
Explosion of sufficient size will help destabilize the range, and will cut through a number of primary systems. We need to trigger a detonation on a large scale.
I won't lie, I'll never be able to repeat that. Grenades can also detonate in chain reactions, meaning that if you blow up an enemy carrying grenades, all of those grenades may blow up as well. This can lead to some very impressive explosions taking out whole squads. One of the best things I noticed was when one of my grenades blew up and the impact hit a grunt halfway through throwing a grenade. The impact changed the trajectory of his grenade so it struck a tree instead. The game is full of insane details like this. As for your survivability, when you get shot you have a shield that goes down very quickly, and then a health bar beneath that. Your shield will recharge once you've not taken damage for a few seconds, but the health bar doesn't. You'll have to rely on health packs to restore your health. The placement of health packs ranges from an all-you-can-eat buffet to obnoxiously bad, as in sometimes you will walk past 2 health packs you don't need and will never return to, and sometimes you will have probably fucked yourself and either need to get insanely lucky or restart the entire chapter. This is an old school shooter thing, and I expected it. What I do like is that the health packs are often placed with visual storytelling. There's usually always a dead trooper reaching for a medipack, or a crashed vehicle, its supplies spilled on the ground. The actual effort that went into placing them is top tier. The spacing between them can be fucking ludicrous, although thankfully this is rare. For the most part you will find them just when you need them. After escaping the Autumn and watching it plummet to the Halo, the Chief is the sole survivor of the lifeboat, which also crashed. Nice flying, guys. They got a Draenei pilot or something? Cortana, still plugged into his suit, says she's picking up inbound Covenant troops, so we best move. It's here we're presented with the complete opposite of the first level. No corridors, no doorways, open terrain, cliffs, rivers, freedom. I'll talk about the variety in level design later, but for now I just want to voice my appreciation for the stark difference and how well the game combines linear progression with limited path choices. You'll often revisit places you've already been, but it isn't disappointing. It's usually circling back around while facing new threats, and being there for an entirely different purpose. There's a lot of personality to Halo's backtracking. There's usually a point a game hooks you. You know what I'm talking about. And I know it's only the second level, but this is the moment I clicked with the game. Cortana signals a UNSC vessel to come pick up survivors, but at the same time we see more lifeboats landing, and if someone isn't there when they touch down, Covenant forces will tear them apart.
Look, more lifeboats. They're coming in fast. If those lifeboats make it down, they're gonna look right on top of them.
Bowhammer, we need you to disengage your Warthog. The Master Chief and I are going to see if we can save some soldiers. Roger, Cortana.
Cortana instantly sets the tone of heroism, duty, and if that wasn't enough, they drop this beautiful machine in front of us to ride across country. And I'm behind the wheel for 10 seconds and hit a tree. Now, I am a good driver in real life. In video games, not so much. What a perfect time to talk about vehicles. Halo lets you get behind the wheel of several vehicles, and like the weapons, they all handle differently. But first and foremost, let me say that none of these control like Leon Kennedy, because there are no tank controls. Steering, at least on the PC, is directed by the mouse. You press W to accelerate, and your mouse will steer. This is fine. Yet it creates some issues I'll talk about on a case-by-case basis. First up, the absolute unit that is the Warthog. Look at this beast. The Warthog is an all-terrain vehicle to get you from A to B. It handles well, good maneuverability and decent speed. It's the epitome of human design. Simple, effective, reliable. The real beauty of the Warthog are the passenger seats. The side seat can hold a Marine who can shoot out from relative comfort, and the back holds a mounted minigun. Get another guy up there and you're a rolling lead machine. The Warthog is blissfully resistant to impact damage, which is a good thing when I'm driving.
Smoke them if you got them, I tell ya.
But you can still pull some 3-point turns that result in the vehicle being flipped. Fortunately, flipping it back over is as simple as hitting a button. Oh. Alright, Barry. When they ask, he got shot by an alien. The Covenant have vehicles too, such as this beautiful thing. Now this is more a work of art than a vehicle, and she handles like a butterfly floating through a dream. A butterfly equipped with 2 high fire rate plasma cannons, extremely maneuverable, fast, and with limited hover capability. The Ghost is a joy to ride across Halo. The Banshee is the Covenant's aerial vehicle. It's reasonably fast and shoots well, but the truth is I didn't spend much time in these. I only used them to reach objective points when it was absolutely necessary. I like that level objectives involved attacking enemy camps to commandeer Banshees, so you can fly to inaccessible locations. That is a great idea, but the vehicle itself, I could take it or leave it. The Banshee is nothing to scream about. Finally, humanity's sledgehammer. The Scorpion is beautiful and its main gun packs the biggest punch you'll see, but that's about it. The aim is never quite right beyond a certain point. Despite being in a tank, you can just get one-shotted seemingly at random. Most importantly is that the tank, while capable of rotating the turret 360 degrees, cannot move in one direction and shoot in another at the same time. The actual tank doesn't have tank controls. Besides this, vehicles are largely fun and well placed. They never feel like they outstay their welcome. In Halo, you're never thinking, oh, I wish this vehicle section would end. It doesn't happen. They didn't just work in an awkward turret section, they crafted a great driving experience for the most part. I want to point out the attention to detail as well, that the Warthog actually slides on the ice. That is fantastic. Your passengers get psyched up when you grab even the slightest airtime. The way the Banshee's crash feels weighty, and you can see the pilot eject out of the cockpit. The thing with vehicles that got me the most was the left-hand drive. I'm feeling pretty cocky at one point. I've taken out squads of grunts and elites. All the Marines look up to me and say, wow, that's him, Mr. Halo. Then the tables turn. The enemies don't just get smarter, they start to roll out the big guns. The shield boys. The paladin mains. Let's talk about enemy variety, which starts small but soon grows to a complete roster of alien menaces. The grunts are the small funny guys running around. Think intelligent but easily scared monkey with a gun. In packs they can put out some serious firepower if they're given the chance. Fortunately they're unshielded, weak, and will run and panic if their leaders are killed. These are your cannon fodder enemies, made dangerous only by the presence of the elites. Later though, some are equipped with plasma ball launchers, making them both deadly and a walking accident waiting to happen. The elites are the tall chads in armor. These guys are much tougher. Not only are their shields heavily resistant to most projectile weapons, they're crack shots and can quickly burn through your shielding. These guys are fast, capable of dodging out of both weapons fire and attempts to stick grenades to them. They prefer to shoot at you, but that's okay because I prefer it when they shoot at me too, as they are deadly in melee. Even more so if you should cross paths with a golden elite wielding an energy sword. A single swipe from this means death, though this does make them far easier to just blow up. While grunts are capable of mounting turrets, elites will also mount vehicles and may actually come after you in ghosts or worse, banshees. At one point I kept getting my ass handed to me by an elite in a banshee, until I realised I could actually make a mad dash to the vehicle and beat him to the punch. Excuse me, I want to drive. My favourite variation of the elite, however, is the cloaker. They're much weaker than their brethren, which makes sense. You can't have both a shield and a cloaking device operational at the same time. It's a science fiction rule. So, once you spot them, they're far easier to kill. But I just love this. They're some of the best cloaked enemies I've seen. The shimmer is so close to the Jem'Hadar cloak, and they're often used at points in the game when the tension has simmered to a slow point. They're used to build dread in the player. I love it. The hunters are hulking brutes, armed with a full-on riot shield and a huge plasma cannon. These guys are virtually indestructible apart from their sensitive spots at the back, which I guess they just forgot to wear armor on, but still it creates an interesting challenge to try and flank them because they tend to stay still and fire at you artillery style. You need to bait them into a fist attack, dodge and then circle around them in order to see their weak spot. Enemy design that promotes tactics beyond run and gun gets a big thumbs up from me. The only enemy type I really did not enjoy were the shield bearer type enemies. They're very numerous and capable of shooting you over their shield, their shields are remarkably tanky, and they force you into using energy weapons. You can flank them, but the truth is they just pivot on the spot. It's literally faster to run up and smack them than it is to shoot them. Just not a fun enemy to fight in my opinion. Now I know I said open season on spoilers, but I want to give a little extra warning here for the enemy known as the Flood. I really had no idea what this was going in, and I could not be happier with what the game gave me. Just a swarm of these strange, pulsating, organic sacs that scurry across floors, walls and ceilings. They morph their victims into mindless beasts, capable of leaping great heights and slashing at you. Almost every enemy in the game has a Flood version. You'll fight assimilated marines, elites, and some of them even retain their special abilities. Have fun in the armory. However, what is not fun are zombies with rocket launchers. It is an instant death, which, okay, fair enough, but still, whoever fucking came up with this, I hate you. The enemies are almost all fun to fight against, and their AI, for the time, is very good. They'll try and flank you if possible, take cover when necessary, and they'll definitely try and overwhelm you. It felt like they vary their tactics depending on how many of them are left. In small numbers, the Covenant will try and hold back, preferring to shoot you only when you show yourself, but when they vastly outnumber you, or they have the high ground, they just open up full auto. I can't be certain of this, but this is how it felt while playing. The Flood will just charge at you relentlessly with little strategy involved. They are Zerg players. All of the enemy reactions are some of the best I've ever seen. No, really. Enemies with sticky grenades on them will run around panicking, sometimes towards you, which is really funny. And sometimes they'll channel their inner amateur dramatic and cry out in rage. Grunts will run away in fear if you start taking out elites, but they will eventually turn and fight back. Enemies will do their best to prioritise threatening targets. For the Covenant that usually means you, but the Flood will usually go after other targets first, especially if you stop shooting them. Again, this is all observational, but I can't help but praise the AI for the time. Like I said earlier, you'll also have Marine buddies from time to time, and their AI is decent, their reactions are fucking priceless.
Out of the way, muchacho!
The overall level and encounter design is solid. Sometimes you're wading through aliens in corridors and tunnels, other times you're waging war through large surface areas. There's always some form of cover or point of interest to fight around. Corridors have alcoves for ducking into, hangars have crates and terminals to hide behind. Never are the areas boring to fight through, although some are more engaging than others. Usually the levels are very well balanced, with enough enemies to pose a serious threat to you if you're careless. However, there are usually one or two Spartan checks, let's call them, where you will get minced if you're not awake. They're fun, brutal, and hair-pulling, but they feel so satisfying when you get past, even if it means resorting to some underhanded tactics, like letting them duke it out first. It does mean that there are portions where it's better to run past enemies, which I don't mind. It only reinforces the openness of the gameplay more by not forcing you to engage with everything that breathes. But I need to talk about the third chapter called Truth and Reconciliation because it is just riddled with annoyances. And the first one is at least a general issue that bleeds into the level design across the entire game, and that is the checkpoint system. There are no manual saves in Halo Combat Evolved, at least not in the MCC version. You reach a point, a checkpoint is saved. You cannot roll back to an earlier checkpoint. You only restart the entire chapter. To state why this is a problem, I'm going to play a little footage here from my attempt to board a Covenant ship. Cortana gives me an idea of where I am and that I need to reach a door on the lower levels. Opening that door will let in some Marines. I need to get down there, through a small horde of Covenant forces. You may notice I have 1 health point left. I have been running around with 1 health point for 30 minutes. I triggered a checkpoint and cannot go back to a previous one where I have more health. And there are a lot of aliens. I die. Over and over and over. I finally get there almost perfectly, and then I die. If you're thinking we'll just restart the chapter, restarting the chapter would put me back where I used the sniper rifle on those turrets. That is a long way back. This is the issue. Without some sort of multi-autosave or selectable checkpoints, even picking a health pack up by accident too early can royally fuck you. I backed up into a health pack I didn't know was there once, and my soul melted at the 3 points it restored. Worse still is there are some checkpoints you can reuse over to save your progress, but I found none of these in Chapter 3. But back to my door problem, because I've had enough. Finally I think, fuck it, I'll just jump down there and open the door. And I can't believe it, it works. I have to praise Halo for not forcing me around a convoluted path. Almost every level has some sort of open plan or multi-path approach to the next area. I could have just jumped down there anytime. And what do I find after I open the door? A health kit. Perfect. I have, however, unleashed a horde of aliens onto those Marines. They don't stand a chance, and I really wanted to try and keep them alive. I eventually give up on that idea and just leave. This leads into a really cool Covenant hangar bay, and this is a great concept for an area to fight through. There's an area up top that you cannot get to yet, so the aliens shooting you from up there pose a real danger. And these elites are Widowmaker mains when they want to be. It's distressing. There are some areas of cover where I can hide from, but not many. I'm forced to hug the walls. It's fun. And when I've taken out the aliens on the deck, 2 hulking aliens emerge. This would be a problem because I want to distance myself from them, meaning staying undercover isn't always possible. To balance out the challenge, the aliens up top, well, I guess they go for drinks or grab a tea because they bugger off. It's a very video gamey balance, but I don't care. This is good encounter design. However, if I died anywhere after this point, before I reach the top terminal, I have to redo the entire section again, and to be honest, it becomes a bit of a chore running around the hangar trying to find that one grunt who ran away. Meanwhile, you're just being killzoned by the fucking CSGO players upstairs. The 3rd chapter is exceptionally tiring because eventually you will rescue Captain Keyes from the brig. If he dies, you instantly lose and need to go back to the checkpoint. And checkpoints don't always happen after every long conversation.
Oh man, we're trapped in here. We're screwed. We're screwed, man.
Stow the belly-aching, soldier. Remember, you're a leatherneck. Stow the belly-aching, soldier. Remember, you're a leatherneck. Stow the belly-aching, soldier. Remember, you're a leatherneck.
And this fucker will not take cover. And the homing darts from enemy needlers always home in on him. He gets the VIP treatment every time. It's not challenging or hard, it's just frustrating. And it's such a shame because up until now, I'd just been enjoying the game non-stop. And after Chapter 3, the fun resumed. Until Chapter 7. Oh, you know what? Slight side tangent. I'm not going to go on and on, but Chapter 7 is just... oh, it's fucking awful. It's such a departure from everything else. The issues I have with Chapter 3 are minor compared to 7. The library would have been an exciting action-packed delve into a flood-infested facility, and it starts off that way. But it just keeps going and going. Linear corridor after linear corridor, waiting for doors to open. Expository dialogue you can't hear. You can't stop to read the subtitles because the enemies never stop coming. It's boring and ends with a sprint that is nigh impossible because the second you take out the enemies guarding the beam of light, whatever the fuck it is, they respawn, all shooting at you. You just have to run and jump. You might make it this time. Back to Chapter 3, which has some amazing set pieces. It starts off with an assault on a ground installation to reach a gravity lift that will carry Marines to the ship above, sort of like a ring platform to transport up to an orbiting Hatak. Then, once you're on board, you're fighting the Covenant, and of course the numbers are overwhelming, and you're wading through them. It's fantastic. But the systems here can just start to dick you around, and it means you end up with more chore moments than bangers. It isn't Chapter 3's design itself that I'm moaning about, it's how the stretches between health and checkpoints feels disproportionate to the rest of the game. The level itself is actually one of the best in the game, and even then, even when I really have something to groan about, the music kicks in. We're in that last dash for the escape ship, and it feels good.
That's it. The dropship is loose.
Everybody, mount up. Let's get on board.
And then right after that, you load into the best level in the game. Chapter 4, The Silent Cartographer.
And everything was lovely once again. Wonderful.
It is everything perfect about Halo. What an intro. UNSC dropships approaching the beautiful beach, a Marine leaning out the rear, the ship lands and boots are on the ground, you start blasting, throwing grenades. I do not care about my accuracy because I'm enjoying this so much, and the chatter of the Marines makes every step on the beach feel like a victory. Ships fly past as you press the attack. There's even opportunity to flank them in this stretch of land, highlighting that even in its narrower open spaces, the level design shines and gives the player room to work. Your reward for the successful beachhead? What else? And you fucking bet, first try baby, let's go. We don't leave our people behind. Unless they really try our patience. Years ago, a demo for Halo came to PC. For all intents and purposes, it was the Silent Cartographer level, and I played it to death, over and over. I never bought the game because I had so much fun with the demo, wrecking cars, throwing grenades. I was younger then, so I treated it as a sandbox, and the truth is, you can still play the game that way today. This level is everything good about Halo, at least for me.
So, you beat the Halo demo. Not bad, soldier, not bad at all. But are you ready to take the next step? In the full version of Halo, you'll find additional vehicles like tanks, plasma turrets, and aircraft.
And yes, I must have seen this message a dozen times. I was so glad to see Sergeant Johnson after all this time. The entire island can be circumnavigated, preferably on a warthog. There are ways into the interior of the island and various objectives to reach. The pacing and level design here is fantastic. You never get bored of what you're doing, and you have so much room to stretch your legs. But you also have interior, smaller areas of combat to play through, with new enemies and new weapons. The level changes as you progress, and it ends with you getting back on the dropship. Full circle. Fantastic. The swamp level is another example. A great open plan, ominous swamp, thick air and limited visibility. Then the gradual descent into a seemingly empty research complex, only to find out what waits deep within. Halo is a game where the level design is wonderful for the era, and to be honest, with the exception of the library, every single level is enjoyable, though some are far and away more brutal than others. But very rarely the encounters don't take into consideration the limitations of the checkpoint system. I died a lot, but rarely was that down to the encounter design. I put it on heroic. It's meant to be challenging and I enjoyed that a lot. But my need to get good aside, there are some stretches which just felt utterly shit to play through, because they were designed without considering that you are being shot at from 10 different directions, and that checkpoint just saved your progress with 1 HP left. That isn't challenge, that's fucking horrendous. Yet, this is rare enough that the truth is, you can overlook those sections. They're minutiae in an otherwise enjoyable and action-packed romp. It swings between satisfying and exciting corridor shooter with limited open plan elements to wide open spaces with multiple points of entry, large enough to have fun with vehicles and flanking combat. It never approaches Deus Ex's level of explorative freedom, but it's still some of the best level design for FPSs of the era. Just power through Chapter 7 and you'll be fine. I feel like there are parts I've not held back when judging Halo, so I want to be clear about this. The complaints I have about health pack placement, Chapters 3 and 7, other various annoyances, I would have made these same complaints back in 2001. However, with the benefit of playing this 20 years later, I can honestly say there is so much in this game that was really ahead of its time. The good outweighs the bad in every single instance. It feels as fun to play today, even with so many modern shooters out there. Hell, if anything it feels more fun to play than modern shooters. I didn't think anything could come close to Resident Evil 4's finale of escaping an exploding island on a jet ski. Halo comes pretty close. You escape a crashed starship with its core about to go critical by driving through an obstacle course. I mean, what the fuck is going on? What part of the ship is this? What function does this serve? How is this an integral part of a battle cruiser? It has built-in ramps and jumps, for crying out loud. But it doesn't matter. It's filled with enemies, explosions, and there's a ticking clock. It's just plain good fun. And it even has its own chopper mic moment. Godspeed, Foehammer. Godspeed. Oh, and it still isn't as stupid as the fake flame vents on shitty Star Trek Discovery. Actual brain rot set design. The gameplay is that wonderful culmination of stress, tactics, and just head-on charging into the fray. With enough guns and grenades to make you happy whether you favour being a crack shot or just spraying wildly. Add to that, every part of the environment is interesting to navigate through. The gradual build-up as you fight increasingly overwhelming odds. While sometimes the balancing of the encounters leaves a bit to be desired, there's no doubt they're crafted so that when you finally overcome those odds, you feel like a Spartan, marching through the snow towards a Covenant emplacement, ready to take on the universe. And then a Banshee dive bombs you, crushing you against a rock, and the pilot laughs while he flies away. If that isn't peak gameplay, I don't know what is. But enough gameplay, we move on to the story. Well, there definitely is a story, but it has its ups and downs in how it's told. Some elements of the narrative are absolutely fantastic. Without hyperbole, some of the best storytelling I've seen in an FPS for the era. And other elements can't help but feel a little disjointed and video gamey. To talk about this, I will be spoiling major elements of the entire story. The opening cinematic is perfect. It instantly sets the tone of the game. A military science fiction adventure. Not too silly, but not too serious either. The plot is simple enough. The UNSC, that's United Nations Space Command, has arrived at a giant ring world known as the Halo. The crew of the Pillar of Autumn immediately come under attack by a hostile alien faction known as the Covenant. They have no choice but to try and put the Autumn down on the surface of the Halo, launching life pods as she goes. The Autumn comes equipped with a shipboard AI known as Cortana, and unfortunately the Covenant would absolutely download a car. So, to stop them from stealing the UNSC's intellectual property and hentai stash, cheers, love! Captain Keyes orders Master Chief to plug Cortana into his exosuit. After escaping the ship and watching the Autumn crash into the ring, the Chief also crashes, and must do his best to regroup and rescue Marines. Along the way we learn that the ring world is in fact a weapon of unimaginable power. Now it's up to you to make sure humans get their hands on the trigger first. It's a good setup for a space adventure, and I won't go into every detail, but I want to talk about my favourite parts of the story, where the narrative really shines, and I will also talk about the weakest part of the story. If the Silent Cartographer is my favourite chapter from a gameplay perspective, then Guilty Spark is my favourite chapter narratively. You start in the swamps, oozing with ambience. The storytelling starts the moment you touch down, with an automated distress call from a crashed dropship, looping a request for help. But the Marines are gone.
I will send this message to repeat at intervals. Dropship Victor 933, clear.
You press on into the swamp, eventually finding an ancient structure. A lift lowers you into the bowels of a facility. We fight a few Covenant forces, but oddly they don't feel as numerous as they have previously, and we soon see why. Something else has been killing them. The visual storytelling here is fantastic. We start to see halls filled with alien blood, vast containers dripping with the residue of whatever was once inside, barricades quickly set up to keep something in. Worst of all, we see this absolutely undefeatable Covenant emplacement, turrets, shields, barricades. It would take a small army or a Spartan to breach this fortified position. And it's unmanned. Empty. Finally, we reach the survivor.
Stay back! Stay back! You're not turning me into one of those things! I'll blow your brains out! Get away from me!
The poor man must be in shock from engaging Covenant troops. We find a human body, blood splattered everywhere, and then the rest of the squad. I guess every Marine has a black box in their helmet because the Chief is able to watch what happened to them by taking the SD card out and plugging it in. I'm not going to go into the super details. I just want to praise the storytelling here, the dialogue and voice acting both. All the animation, framing and pacing. This, for me, is the best bit of the entire story. We want to know what happened here, and rather than some boring back and forth questioning, we get this awesome look into the past, unencumbered by expository dialogue.
Looks like a Covenant patrol. Badass elite units, all KIA.
Real pretty. Friend of yours?
Nah, we just met.
We're seeing it not only as it happened, but from the perspective of a regular Marine rather than a Spartan. It's coherent, clear, and tells us everything we need to know in one segment. Best of all, it plays on the tropes and theme of this entire chapter. Horror. Videotapes. Camera footage. These are commonly used in horror films and games because it's a great way to show something that happened, without having the protagonist be there.
Amateurs.
While at the same time it instills a feeling of dread in the viewer and characters both, because even if they aren't in immediate danger right now, it reinforces that they will be. And now both we and the Chief know that whatever those things in the video were, they never left the facility. They're still down here. And then we hear the banging. They're loose, hundreds of them scrambling across walls and floors, flooding out of the doors. The whole facility is filled with these monstrous things, and we can see they've morphed their victims, both human and Covenant, into puppets to suit their own purpose. Such a great way to blend gameplay directly into the storytelling. I went back into the game to record some extra footage of the opening level, and set the difficulty to normal. This time I don't get rushed out of the cryopod like I do on Heroic. I get some basic maneuvering tutorials seamlessly worked into the story, as they're both making sure the Chief has been thawed out properly and that his suit is calibrated okay. It even gives me the option to test inverted pitch controls and teaches me about shield recharging. There's also a more in-depth cutscene for leaving the cryo bay.
Intruders in the IO2! Please don't! Sam! Sam! Come on, we've got to get the hell out of here!
Now this may not seem like much, but this guy's death hit a little harder after hearing him shout out his dying friend's name. There's a lot of humour in Halo, but at the same time the game does make you feel for the men and women of the UNSC. But here is where I talk about the bit of the story that just felt disjointed and half-baked. And I have to do it now because it's sandwiched between the two best bits of the story. It's like having a sandwich with really nice seedy oat bread, but some bozo put some wallpaper paste in the middle. That filling is the library chapter. Once you've escaped the installation overrun by the flood and returned to the swamp, you'll soon be contacted by the Guilty Spark, a remnant of the people that built the Halo. He says he needs your help to contain the threat of the flood and teleports Master Chief away with no questions asked or answered. There's absolutely no back and forth here. This is the definition of a video game cutscene. Hello, I am good guy, you are good guy, I will teleport you to the next level now. At the start of the next chapter, the Spark explains you must collect the index before they can activate the installation. Now while this is eventually explained, I had no idea what I was doing here until much later. This is the first time in the game I'm doing something and don't really know what is happening. I get the gist, but I don't really know. And the Chief is just trusting this alien machine, but why? Then it happens. The Spark explains the entire backstory of the Flood, what they are, their containment, how dangerous they are, all while you progress through this ancient library to recover the index needed to defeat the Flood. Good idea. Unfortunately, you will never be able to hear or even read the subtitles of any of it, because he delivers this exposition while under constant attack from the Flood. This is the worst bit of exposition in human history.
In 1967, mine workers discovered the first remnants of a long-lost Native American civilization, the Abkhani.
Okay, the second worst bit of exposition. I have barely a fucking clue what happened. I'm mostly guessing this is what he says. An alien utopia exists. They find or create an organism that nearly wipes them out. They manage to destroy the organism, but they're fucking stupid, so they put some in a petri dish for safekeeping. Aliens vanish, and then new aliens come along, and those geniuses let it out as well. It doesn't help that this entire chapter is the same thing over and over. Push through a corridor of loads of enemies, reach a door, wait for it to open, and then do it again. The exposition is lost in a chapter that would have benefited from being half the length. This is right after that amazing swamp chapter.
Oh, hello.
But after this, we get a great cutscene in the return of Cortana, and I wholly enjoyed this cutscene because it puts some of what just happened into perspective, and it highlights Cortana's personality and capability. Turns out the guilty Spark, who we were helping, was going to starve the Flood by killing all sentient life in the galaxy.
Wipe the galaxy clean of all sentient life.
Is it true?
More or less.
Nice one, Chief. However, it does leave us with some mysterious implications that there's a relationship between the Spark and the Chief. I like this. Despite my complaints about the library and how there were no questions asked, this one little allusion may actually relieve some of my complaints. But we'll have to see in the second game. Upon learning the true destructive power of the Halo, Cortana hatches a plan to do enough damage to destroy it. But what could cause such devastation?
Such devastation!
A starship's fusion reactors going critical would do the job.
That is fantastic. The very thing you're going to use to take out the weapon is the ship you arrived in, the Autumn. I love that sense of poetry.
Yeah, it's like poetry, sort of, they rhyme.
Now, the only thing that stands between total annihilation, be it from the Flood or from a superweapon, is a crashed ship that I hadn't thought about since Chapter 2, and it's a perfect example of why, despite its shortcomings, the narrative of Halo shines. There are elements here that feel unabashedly like a video game from the 2000s, but there are times it climbs above that, just like the gameplay. There are parts where the story fails purely on a technical level, but they're rare, and the remainder is good enough to overlook these. Again, just like the gameplay, you might see a pattern here. The bad bits in Halo are glaring enough that I can't help but mention them, but the overall experience is so breakout and memorable that I'll risk saying, fuck it, I can suffer those bits because the rest of the game is damn fun. And the rest of the story is simple but flowing. There's never any lost momentum, something the gameplay does its best to mirror. While many of the plot developments happen while you play, there are key moments filled with cutscenes. And for the time, they're very good and a great way to give more time to those important developments, while allowing the smaller story developments to happen organically outside of cutscenes, usually over the radio and facilitated by Cortana. Where characters are concerned, I'm a big fan of all the players. Sergeant Johnson and Captain Keyes are of course characters in every sense of the word. They're meant to be science fiction stereotypes, with Captain Keyes being the typical starship captain, and Johnson being the absolute master copy of a Marine sergeant.
We'll let them have is a belly full of lead and a pool of their own blood to drown in.
And they're great. There's a lot of character to the incidental people like the Marines, Foehammer. Keyes is there to progress the plot. He sets you on mission, then you go rescue him, then he gives you a new mission, etc. He's not a bad character, far from it, it's just he's functional. The guilty Spark is a remnant of the Halo builders. There's clearly some connection between them and the Chief, who at one point he refers to as the Reclaimer, but it's not explained yet. The Spark seems out of sorts and detached from nearly everything going on. More than just emotionless, there's an almost cold amusement to it. The Chief, as protagonists go, is the Chief. He rarely opens his mouth and is more a vessel for the player to fill the shoes of. Yet the man of few words archetype suits the game. While I have no doubt his character will be expanded upon in future, it is relatively bare bones in this game. He's a heroic super soldier on mission 24/7.
You did that on purpose, didn't you?
Cortana is the real star. Compared to ASMR succubus Zana, she's less flirty and ambitious, but very smart. Almost as funny and just as talkative, which I dig, especially as Master Chief is mostly silent. The nicest thing about Cortana is that she actually has personality. No shade to the more robotic AIs, but Cortana has a sense of humour and actually speaks with humanity. She gets annoyed, takes pride in her abilities, and you get a sense that she feels for what's happening to those around her. She's good with computers, I mean, she'd have to be, she's software, which provides a great storytelling mechanic, as Cortana will be able to give directions if she has access to ship schematics, or she can interface with technology without you having to do any of the figuring things out bit for yourself.
One moment, sir. Accessing the Covenant BattleNet.
That may sound lazy, but it's not. It's great for the pacing of the game and helps keep Master Chief's character as the heroic Spartan and Cortana as the intelligent backup. The Chief isn't dense, well I mean, besides that one time, but he's a fighting machine. Cortana's impact on the world is limited to the technological, So while she could probably take command of an entire ship, there's very little she could do to stop someone, say, starting a fire in the engine room. The Chief and Cortana are stronger together, which is always a solid foundation for character development. The dialogue is actually stellar, and embraces the simplicity and the cliched in equal measure. It's difficult to talk about it because it all goes by so fast, but there are a few lines that stick with you.
Somebody order a warthog.
Hey, I didn't know you made house calls, Warhammer.
You know our motto, we deliver.
Halo makes great use of visual storytelling, not just in the Guilty Spark, but everywhere. You'll see signs of battle, wrecked vehicles. There's no dialogue or explanation for what happened because you can see it right in front of you, with a plot meant to be simple to keep you constantly in the game, and only the most important of story beats asking you to sit and watch a cutscene. There's a charm to Halo's story that I can't help but smile at. No, it's not the most complex plot in the world, but there's enough depth and thought to tie the levels together to give you purpose for each mission, and I enjoyed it. Where sound and music are concerned, Halo absolutely smashes it. The soundtrack was composed by Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore, and honestly it's one of the more unique soundtracks I've heard. If the game is part original creation, part homage to every sci-fi action movie ever, then the soundtrack is the perfect blending of the two. It's a reminder that this isn't just an amalgamation of other stories and beats, it's a unique world with a story to tell, even if it does pay its respects to those that came before. There's a wonderful focus on strings and percussion instruments. Those are drums, see, I'm learning. But what really sets the music of Halo apart, right from the start, is the chanting. The main theme is powerful, reverent, and inspiring. Throughout the game, the music perfectly matches the gameplay taking place or the mood they want to create. The unforgettable, if brutal, Chapter 3 isn't unforgettable because of those checkpoints. The Truth and Reconciliation suite is iconic. Fast drums accompanied by the sounds of heroism soaring through the track. It's just fucking awesome. And then, just to keep things interesting, a guitar comes in at the end, followed by the same haunting chants from the theme. Of course, the music evolves into a sound wholly different for the spooky, horror-driven section. They didn't just craft music to fit the genre and story beats, but also to enhance the emotions the player was feeling, whether that's heroism or dread. All of the tracks are great, and while not everyone is instantly memorable, they are all bangers. Halo's use of an underlying theme that comes back every now and then is something I always love to hear in a video game soundtrack. The sound design is great for a game that came out in 2001. The weapon sounds are all so crisp and satisfying. There's just a real character to them all. Keeping in theme with Halo, the guns don't just sound different to be different. You can tell what your weapon does from the sound of it. Even the overheating and cooling sounds are superb. The vehicles all have a personality to them, and I love how alien the Covenant's vehicles sound, while the UNSC ones sound grounded. Ship and vehicle sound is often overlooked. It's very important, so I approve of this. The ambient sound is just phenomenal in setting the mood and tone, immersing you within the world. The howling snow-covered landscape. The foreboding swamp. An alien facility. And where I hope to be by the end of this video. All of these sounds are real, unintrusive, and enhance the player's journey through the various sections of the Halo. The voice acting is peak. No, it really is. All of the voice actors are on point and they capture the roles and energy needed for the game.
Got a bad feeling about this.
Boy, you always got a bad feeling about something.
Putting in enough originality to keep things fresh, but also paying respect to those classic sci-fi and military stereotypes. Pete Stacker is ideal as the reserved and experienced Captain Keyes. Tim DiDarbo does a good job as the detached Guilty Spark, and while he doesn't say much, I think Steve Downes is perfect for Master Chief.
I think we're just getting started.
Throughout the game you hear Marines, pilots and radio chatter, and I want to give a shout out to all these incidental and smaller roles which just help you sink into the world. These guys all absolutely nailed it, they're Marines through and through. I even got paired up with Austin Powers.
Hey mate, that was mine, you stole my kill!
But the two standouts for me are obvious. David Scully becomes Sergeant Johnson, fast-talking, authoritative, and he can't say something without making you smile. I knew I recognised the name because he was also Radek in Sin episodes.
Get my sub ready.
And of course, Jen Taylor as Cortana. She puts real personality and energy into the character without losing sight of the fact that she's playing an artificial intelligence. There's enough moments where her energy isn't dropped, but it is diluted in favour of a colder, more analytical tone. And finally, Brian Morden, a fan who visited the studios before sadly passing away in 2003, but left his mark right at the start of the game.
You want him? She's been hit!
I have one minor complaint about the sound. The game is plagued by a shortcoming that I've always hated, and that is no separate dialogue volume slider. It's all on effects, meaning if the game puts you into a combat situation, there is no way you can actually hear the voice acting. I had to turn on subtitles, though I really prefer playing without them. These days more and more games do have dialogue sliders, but it's something to be aware of for Halo Combat Evolved. A minor complaint and a more technical one. This issue aside, the sound and music of Halo is absolutely 5 by 5. I think graphics are a really boring thing to judge a game on, so I'm doing visuals and spectacle. And that's how dazzling and interesting it is to me within the style of the game. Halo is of course 23 years old, and it shows. Yet the simplistic and colourful environments still manage to reel me into the game's world. There's a certain splendour to the game and a charm to its lack of complexity. It's not easy to describe beyond saying I think it looks good both despite and because of its age. There's never too much going on, you're never oversaturated with detail, but every area and environment is detailed enough to know exactly what you're looking at. The textures are good resolution for the time and fairly good looking. There's even some basic reflective textures. Look at those shiny boys. For the time the animation is good, and I can't help but feel a few cutscenes were made using the tried and tested method of recording movements in game, but it works, looks good, and honestly carries so much charm and heart. I have to admit I'm a little biased, I just love this era in general, so yeah, simple but good animation. It's all fluid from the reloading to the running. Hell, their mouths even move when they speak, which was impressive back then. A little jank in places, occasionally wooden, but it's forgivable, very rare, and not enough to upset your ever-precious immersion. Apart from this bit where a Marine just teleports across the room, but you can get right back in that immersion tank after that. The enemy design is great because it fits the same design brief as TF2. You can recognise an enemy purely from its outline. Things do start to blur where the Flood is concerned, but for the Covenant you know what you're facing every time. The same is true for the weapons, you know exactly what you've picked up from the look alone. Now I did a little research before playing, and the general consensus from Halo fans, that I saw at least, was that the remastered version of Halo Combat Evolved did not honour the original's aesthetic. It didn't pass the vibe check, and I think they're right. It looks totally different. Now while it is pretty, and I've stopped to take a few comparison shots, you can see there is so much extra stuff. I'd almost say oversaturated with unnecessary detail in parts. It's also much brighter now in almost every regard. While this does aid with visibility, and I've played enough Skyrim to know a shitty too dark EMB when I see one,
I can't see a damn thing! Ugh.
The original Halo wasn't too dark. Despite my flashlight fumbling, it's got a real ambience to it, with the darker areas serving to add to the tension as you pan your light about the room when you find your fucking flashlight. The pitch blackness is rare enough that it doesn't become frustrating. I think the remaster is a really lovely graphical update, very pretty, and just downright gorgeous in many places. But it isn't in keeping with the original look of the game. Add to that the decreased sound ambience, and you have a rather different experience. So yeah, not bad, and I recommend you take a look at it to decide for yourself, but I didn't go for it. The original visuals in Halo are pretty, reasonably stylized to help alleviate that low poly limitation, and are all good to look at. Enough eye-catching details to make the world fun to move through, enough flair to set it apart from other games, while having a cohesive aesthetic that is maintained throughout the game. Okay, it's summary time and I'm wrapping up, starting with the negatives because I want to end on a positive note. While the level and encounter design is on point for the most part, there are a couple of chapters where brutality can lead to frustration with the checkpoint system, or worse, just boredom. But despite my complaints, I did enjoy playing through every chapter. Except the library. Fuck the library. You need to link this to a Microsoft account, and I really don't like all these accounts piling up, but that's about it. Halo started life as an indirect successor to Bungie's Marathon games. I'm not really sure what indirect successor means, but that's what it says on the wiki page. I know what a spiritual successor is. I know what an indirect sequel is. That's when it takes place after the events of the first story, but it doesn't follow the same narrative thread. Well, what is an indirect successor? But I digress. Basically, they dicked around for years with the name. Someone wanted to call it Blam, which I think sounds like laundry detergent. Bungie even hired a marketing firm to come up with a better name. They came up with Covenant, which got used in a roundabout way, so money well spent, I guess. Then, one of their own very small dev team, artist Paul Russell, suggested Halo. Someone said, "Oh, that sounds like shampoo. Your previous project name was Blam. Burnt on grease and grassy stains, look out, Master Clean is coming." They ignored those people, and in July of 1999, Bungie's Halo was on display at the Macworld conference, introduced by Steve Jobs. Yeah.
Jason Jones, who is the co-founder of Bungie and the Halo project lead. Halo is the name of this game, and we're going to see, for the first time, Halo. Welcome, Jason.
They finally showed some actual gameplay footage later in June 2000 at E3, as a third-person shooter. Then tragedy struck. Bungie was running on the sales from their Myth series. However, Myth 2 Soulblighter had a glitch that somehow wiped the contents of the directory it was installed to. This is what you might call a minor technical issue. Unfortunately, this bug was discovered after 200,000 units had been produced, many of which were already on the road to stores. They could release broken software and fix it with a patch, but it was a patch that might not reach everyone because remember, this was 1998. Their other option was to delay the release and replace every single disc in every jewel case. So they shut down the presses and recalled the CD-ROM technology. All 200,000 units were coming home, meaning the recall costs reached around $800,000. I didn't realize how much I'd respect these guys when I installed Halo. To keep the studio afloat, they turned first to Take-Two and then Microsoft Game Studios before negotiating a deal between both of them. Halo was now poised for the Xbox's initial lineup, making it one of the console's first ever games, and it was of course Microsoft's first game console.
That's fascinating.
Unfortunately, the game wasn't finished, and they had less than 1 year to assemble it from their loose concepts. During their insane crunch and testing and desire to get all their ideas into a workable game, it was clear that some things would need to be cut. A truly open world was never going to happen. The campaign was shortened. An entire level got swapped out for a cutscene. These guys were sleeping in the office just to finish this game. But they did, and it's pretty good. My favourite part of this whole thing is that the prototype segment that they used to test their enemy AI was called B30. This little sandbox they made was so good that eventually it became the best level in the game, the Silent Cartographer. I guess I'm saying it's a great game. A wonderful shooter with a fun sci-fi setting, made with enough love that you get pulled into the world. Fast-paced combat promoting both defensive and run and gun gameplay. It's easy to see where Halo draws upon other games that came before it, and just as easy to see that it's the source of so many innovations in games to this day. I mostly remember hearing about it being a massive part of the console wars, which I just do not care about. No offense guys, I'm a PC lover. It's what I grew up with, and it's what I'm most fond of. Also, I couldn't use a controller if my life depended on it, so for me, being able to play Halo on a PC is great. Of course, the game did end on a cliffhanger, and it's like the man said,
But then again, all good things must come to an end.
Well, no, I was thinking more all good things must inevitably have a sequel. We're in the Marvel age now, nothing ever ends, even if I fucking wish it would. And from just one expression, we all instantly know what Leon's thinking.
Long time no see.
Ada.
Leon, you have to find some way to get inside.
A forgotten god stirs. An ancient enemy of mankind threatens to destroy us all. Are you prepared to begin or not?
Huh?